Hey, what's going on today, guys? Trey, welcome back to the channel. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about life in the United States after living in Europe. If you guys are new to the channel, hi, my name is Trey, and I'm an American that has been living abroad in Germany for the last couple of years. So really miss it, enjoyed my time there, learned so much, got a chance to really explore Europe. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I was extremely spoiled living there. And I really hope that it provides some clarity for you guys on just how the state of affairs is here in the United States. So in this video, we're gonna be comparing and contrasting the differences between life over in Europe and life here in the United States. So I'm sure there's gonna be some points that I mentioned that might elicit some emotions inside of you. I just invite you to keep an open mind and remember, first and foremost, that I am American at the end of the day. Now, I did move back to the United States at the tail end of September, and so I have been back here in the United States officially for 4 months. Without further ado, stay tuned. Let's get into it. So if you guys are new to the channel, hi, my name is Trey. I'm an American living here in the state of Florida. So I have quite the love-hate relationship with this place, but for all intents and purposes, just keep in mind when I'm talking about the United States, look at it from the scope of somebody that lives here in the state of Florida. Another thing that I wanted to mention is while I did tell you guys at the beginning that I've been living over in Europe for the last couple of years, I actually haven't lived in the mainland United States for around 5 years. So before moving to Germany, I actually lived in the state of Hawaii, and that's actually where my son was born as well. So I really had an amazing time there in Hawaii. You can go back in my catalog of videos and see all of the amazing adventures and fun times that we had there. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it was not an easy place to live. But nonetheless, I love my time there. We had so much fun. I'm very thankful and grateful to have lived in paradise, essentially. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably like, Trey, how on earth do you go from Hawaii to living in Germany? And honestly, for my wife and I at the time, that was an extremely easy decision to make. So we did just have our son, who wasn't even 1 year old at the time, and we really value his well-being and his education. And so when we weighed the pros and cons of staying in Hawaii and moving over to Germany, it was an extremely easy decision for us to make, considering cost of living, considering education, considering overall quality of life. That was just the more desirable place to live versus staying in Hawaii, which statistically speaking has a lower education quality. It has a lot more crime than Germany. And it's also extremely far away from the mainland United States, from Asia. You're basically right smack dab in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so when we looked at those things and weighed the pros and cons, we decided that Germany and Europe in general would be the more desirable place for us. So I do have quite the list of things to discuss here on my phone. I've got about 10 to 12 different things that we're gonna discuss. And the very first thing that I wanna talk about is the economy and the state of the economy here in the United States. Now, prices for groceries, vehicles, homes that I have noticed so far have been significantly higher than they have been in Germany, as well as most of Western Europe in general. So if you're one of those individuals that has had your head stuck in the sand for the last couple of years, prices are extremely high here in the United States for a number of different things. We're experiencing some of the highest inflation that we've ever experienced as a country. Gas prices are pretty high, home prices are high, cost of goods are through the roof. Don't even get me started on the grocery prices. They are ridiculously high in comparison to what I was experiencing in my time in Europe. Now, I think the two biggest shocks that I have noticed and that have really stood out to me are definitely the cost of living as well as the grocery prices, right? These are two things that I am constantly monitoring. I love my food, and I'm currently shopping for a home right now. And so I will tell you, right, I live in the state of Florida, right? And so the state of Florida right now is probably experiencing the highest percentage of growth from a national standpoint. A lot of people are moving here to the state of Florida. Great weather, great outdoor activities, 3 great, amazing metropolitan areas, including Miami-Dade, Broward County, Palm Beach County. You've got the Tampa Bay area, which includes obviously Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, And then you've got Central Florida, which is really comprised of Orlando and a few larger surrounding cities like Winter Park and Maitland. And, there's a lot of areas that are really experiencing a lot of growth. And so while this is great for the economy here in Florida, it has presented a lot of challenges for the residents that have lived here for some time, right? That means cost of living has gone up exponentially, cost of groceries, gas prices, and also just land in general here in Florida is extremely expensive in comparison to our neighboring states like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina. It's becoming increasingly obvious that things here in Florida are really getting crazy. Now you got to remember, I'm coming from one of the more expensive areas in Germany, right there in that Stuttgart, Baden-Württemberg, area. Not a cheap place by any means, but so far what I have noticed is the area that I live in Florida, I would say, let's put Stuttgart right here, right? Let's just use this as the expensive scale. Stuttgart, this is the bottom, right? Stuttgart is up there. It's really high. Where I live here in Florida, I would actually put it above Stuttgart. So it's really kind of shocking because, I grew up here, and Florida, in my viewpoint, has always been a place that has been reasonably priced, But when you have a wave of people coming here from all around the country, California, New York, the Midwest, even people from Texas are moving here in, massive numbers. Everything is going up in price. And so what is happening, unfortunately, there are places like Boca Raton or St. Petersburg, Florida, which have been historically known as being bubbles, right? People like to escape to those places. And sadly, there isn't too much land in either of those places. And so there's, St. Pete, for example, there's not much construction that is taking place because there's no space. So what does that do to the cost of houses? That drives them up. So if you would have bought a house back in 2012 in St. Pete for, let's say, $200,000, just based off of scarcity of availability, that house is now probably worth $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, just because there's nobody, and there's nobody that's, demolishing their house to invite investors, to build, but there's also just no room at all. And so it's created quite the predicament for a lot of Floridians. And I know I've been talking a lot about Florida, but this isn't just a Florida problem. The Atlanta metropolitan area is experiencing it. Chicagoland is experiencing it. The DMV or DC, Maryland, Virginia is experiencing it. The Boston metropolitan area. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find a reasonable place to live. And when you're in my age group, right, I'm 32, just for transparency purposes, that millennial age bracket, it's becoming almost an impossibility to be a home owner or a home buyer. So I know that was a little bit of a rant, but I did want to talk about pricing right now, home pricing and cost of living. It's insane here in Florida. So piggybacking off of home prices and rental prices, another thing that has been a huge shock for me has been the price of groceries and the price of going out to eat. It is just ridiculously high. And I've noticed this around the country. So this, once again, is not just a uniquely Florida issue. It's becoming extremely costly to go grocery shopping. And some of those big box stores like Costco and Sam's Club and Walmart, which have historically been known as being places that are cost effective for families and a little bit cheaper in comparison to like a Whole Foods or a Fresh Market, these places have now become some of the more expensive places to grocery shop. And with the election coming up, inflation and cost of living and just overall prices, to live, I would say it's probably one of the number one issues on the ballot, and if not number one, at least in the top three, because it doesn't matter what socioeconomic status you fall within, people in the United States are noticing and feeling the price increases happening here in the United States. And if you're one of those people that have lived in Hawaii or Southern California or the Pacific Northwest or South Florida, right? You've known that where you live is historically a more expensive place to live. So imagine how those people are now feeling. They literally feel drained, and they are being drained by the constant price increases that are plaguing the United States right now. People are feeling the squeeze right now in the United States, and it really doesn't matter where you live unless you live in like the breadbasket, which includes like Iowa, Kansas, some areas where there's not a lot of people, right? There's not large populations like you'll find along the West Coast or along the East Coast. People are feeling it, man. They really are. And I know me personally, I love to grocery shop. Dude, it's expensive to grocery shop. So I want to talk about how much we were paying when we lived in Germany. So we lived in a 4-room house, which is 3 bedrooms in American terms. And it had 2 bathrooms. And it was like, we were on like the 4th floor. Like, it was really nice. Loved our time there. Awesome neighbors, really close to, like really nice centralized area, right? And so we paid about 2,000 euros. So if you want to do the conversion, that's about 2,200 to 2,300 US dollars. So not cheap, right, in the grand scheme of things, but I'm telling you, if you were to take that same place and stick it in like Miami-Dade here in Florida, or, Hillsborough County, which is also in Florida, or if you were to stick that in Orange County in California, or Los Angeles County, or the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or Boston, that same place is not going to be under $3,500, right? And that's me being very conservative. That's a conservative number, right? So that place is easily going to run you between $3,500 to $6,000, and it was a nice place. Now I want to talk about the groceries, right? So I could go to Edeka or Rewe or Aldi or Lidl, like some of these stores, some of these bigger stores in Germany, Kaufland, right? I can go there, I can get an entire shopping cart of grocery items, and I could be under 100 euros, right? I want to tell you a quick story. So I went to Publix recently. I just had my gallbladder removed, so I can't eat too crazily. But I got like a basic loaf of bread. I got 5 items. I got a loaf of bread, I got some cheese, I got some fruit, and I got like some cereal and some milk, right? So not too many things. I didn't even need a grocery cart for it. Do you know that my total for those groceries ended up being around $60, right? Insane. And this was at Publix, by the way, which is not one of the more expensive grocery stores in the state of Florida. It's not like I was at Whole Foods, right? It's not like I was at Sprouts. This is Publix, which is genuinely known for having pretty decent pricing. Not cheap by any means, not like Walmart, but still pretty dang high. So like I said, inflation and cost of living and pricing right now is probably one of the number 1 issues on the ballot, if not number 1, at least in the top 3. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. But right now, the United States is hurting right now. Like it's not easy to live here. And the middle class is virtually non-existent. And so I don't know. I don't want to get too political in this video, but it'll just be interesting to see what happens moving forward. So the next thing I want to talk about, we actually just addressed it somewhat, but I want to talk about the food quality in the United States versus the food quality over in Europe. I know for a lot of people, you probably already know where I'm going with this, but the food quality here in the United States is much worse than it is in Europe. And it's funny, when I got here, the first 2 weeks that I was here, I was actually really sick. If you know where I'm going with this, it was 100% because of the food, right? It wasn't like there was this major change in weather. It was 100% the food that I was consuming in Germany versus the food that I was consuming here in the United States. So the food quality is significantly lower here. Now, there is a caveat. I've noticed that the organic foods here in the United States have really great quality. Still not, at that European level, but I would say it's right below, right? And I noticed that, unfortunately, a lot of those foods could be a little bit on the higher end of the pricing scale. But, I will always pay more for quality versus paying less for, something that's subpar. And when it comes to your health, I'm not gonna choose price over health personally. But sadly, a lot of Americans have been forced to do so. Now, just kind of going off on a tangent, one thing that I've noticed here in the United States is the refrigerators are much larger here in the United States versus Germany. So people, when they go to the grocery store in Germany, and in Europe in general versus the United States, they're going with the mindset of, we are going to finish this today, tomorrow, and maybe the next day at the most. So 3 days tops. In the United States, we tend to buy in bulk, right? Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart. We want to get all of our stuff, and it's going to sit in our fridge for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. And sadly, the produce tends to last that long here in the United States, which is pretty alarming. What does that tell you? It tells you that preservatives are being used in that food, which drastically brings down the quality, in my opinion. When it comes to the restaurant experience, of course, I'm going to give the edge to Europe. Of course, there's a little bit more availability of foods here in the United States because it truly is a multicultural petri dish of so many different cultures and foods and subcultures. And it's a really great place for diversity, especially depending on where you live, right? But I'm still gonna give the edge to Europe when it comes to overall food quality and restaurant quality. It truly is world class there, depending on where you are. All right, so we are now gonna shift away from the economy and pricing and food quality, and we are actually going to talk about the amount of space here in the United States versus Europe. As most people are aware, the United States is a massive country, right? We've got 50 states, 2 of which that include Hawaii and Alaska are not even here in the mainland United States. And we just are a massive country and we have tons of space here. So what does space mean? It just means more availability of land and more privacy. Americans, I've noticed, versus Europeans really value their space. They value their personal space. They value the spaces between their homes. And so people here, we are a very space and privacy driven society. Gotta buy a big house, gotta get the big car, gotta, go on road trips and have a bunch of open space, gotta be in the outdoors. That's just how America is, right? And so one thing that I have noticed, and in fact, the very first thing I noticed just by even coming in my neighborhood, there is so much space in this country. Now, I don't want to confuse anybody here. I'm not saying that America utilizes its space in the best way possible. In fact, I think that the space utilization here in this country is a complete disaster. The infrastructure could be much better. And I think that Europe has completely run laps around the United States when it comes to use of space, use of land, being able to separate, city from country. I just think that Europe is just completely run laps around the United States in that regard. So living in Germany, right, I could stick a flagpole out my window and be touching the building right next to us, right? Here in the United States, I could literally fit a yacht in between my house. Now, where I live is, I live out in the suburbs, right? So I don't live in the metropolitan area where I live, right? I don't live in the city space where I live. I live a little bit more in the outskirts. So we've got space here, right? But you're gonna pay a premium for that. America just prides itself on everything being big military, big cities, big houses, big cars, big roadways, big ideas. And so you see that in our culture. Everything is just big. You even see it in our food. It's just, people want large here in the United States. You're not gonna get that in Europe. Things are just big here and there is lots and lots of open space. Now, if you're one of those people that live in Europe, right, and you're like, Troy, well, we got space in Europe. Of course you do, right? But if you go to a city like Berlin or a city like London or Dublin, right, most of those city propers, right, they're kind of lacking in the space department, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that there's a lot more space here in the United States. So the next thing I want to talk about, I think you guys will get a good kick out of this, but here in the United States, people really love to have small talk here. I want to talk about Europe first. So in Germany specifically, especially in Stuttgart, right, which is like the most conservative city in Germany, right? Small talk is non-existent there. You might find a few Swabians, that are very nice and they like to, just ask you how your day is, right? But for like most people that live in Baden-Württemberg, they really don't like to have small talk at all. And in fact, it was non-existent. And I noticed this because when we would travel to like London, for example, or we would travel to like the northern parts of the UK, people are very friendly and very nice there and very they want to talk to you. They want to have a conversation. And even if you go to like Prague or really anywhere in Bohemia, I've noticed that people are a little bit more talkative there. For some reason, my little corner of Germany, communication is not a big thing. But it's funny though, you drive 2.5 hours over to Munich, people are very nice there and very friendly. And even in Berlin, people are nice. Hamburg, a cold, wet city in the grand scheme of things, people are nice. But where I live, not the case, not always the case. And even in cities like Paris, right? Or certain cities in France, certain cities in Portugal and Spain, people just don't want to talk, right? And I get it. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I actually kind of adopted that mindset when I lived in Europe. But in the United States, it's not like that always. People want to talk your head off. And so you got to remember, I live in Florida, which is still considered the South. In the southern states, there's something called Southern hospitality. People are nice, people are friendly. There's a sense of wanting and welcoming that just exists here. And since we're in Florida, it exists here too. Now I know Florida man is a thing, right? People are a little bit on the cuckoo and crazy side here, But for the most part, when you go anywhere, people are nice. They're gonna hold the door open for you. They're gonna ask you how your day is. They're gonna ask you how your mom is doing, right? They're gonna make sure that you're good for the most part. And so just to give you an example, right? When you go to Publix, they're gonna talk to you. They're gonna ask you how your day is. They're gonna ask you how you're feeling. They're gonna ask you how your grocery shopping experience was. They're gonna ask, when do you plan on coming back? Like they're gonna talk to you. They're gonna ask you questions. And so I think it'd be very funny. I think it'd be an interesting case study to see a German, right? Or a Swabian, or see somebody from Stuttgart go into a store like Publix here. I would pay money to see how that experience was. I guarantee you the German would be shocked because why is this person speaking to me? But it would also be funny to see the American cashier's response, because the German is most likely not gonna be open and cheerful and cheery. And I think it'd be very interesting to see that dynamic clash. Now, sadly, I do want to kind of go off on a tangent. Unfortunately, how things are here in the United States, right? Your job is tied to your job performance, and part of your job performance is customer service. And there's certain metrics that these employees have to meet. So they go above and beyond. They go to extra step. They fake it, right? And Europe, luckily, and I say luckily because this is important, luckily, those metrics don't exist. You take care of people, you get the job done, and that's it, right? I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to get to know you. You're here to buy a product or you're here to take advantage of a service, and that's it, And so I think people need to understand that there's this false sense of, oh, America's super friendly because people are just nice here. And no, that's not it. It's because people's jobs are literally reliant upon how they treat people. And so I don't personally agree with that. I think as long as you get the job done and you generally take care of people, that should be what the job is about, right? Not, were you smiling? Not, did you ask the customer for their phone number to get a reward? It's a little annoying. That's one of the more annoying things about being back here in the United States. And I generally feel bad for a lot of the workforce because it's just not a genuine experience. It's not a genuine grocery shopping or restaurant experience. Now, real quick, I do just want to let you know, this isn't like a uniquely American thing, right? It's not like a nationwide thing, because you go to a city like New York, right? Cold, hard, big infrastructure. People are just trying to get their stuff done and get you in and out, right? That's their thing. Don't talk to me. Got my headphones in. That's it. I don't want to get to know you. You don't have to get to know me. That's that New York mindset, right? But then if you go to a city like Atlanta, Georgia, for example, or Charleston, South Carolina, they're gonna be nice. They're gonna be friendly. They're gonna hold the door open for you as you're driving your car in and haven't even got out your car yet. They're gonna be holding the door to the establishment to let you in. And so just keep in mind that it is very dependent on where you live, but for the most part, small talk is a thing. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's different everywhere you go, but for the most part, people are generally ready to talk your head off here. In public and in private businesses, they want to talk to you. They want to get to know you. So if you're an introvert, thoughts and prayers. If you're an extrovert, you're gonna love this place. So next thing I wanna talk about is pedestrianism. Pedestrianism, sadly, in the United States is non-existent in comparison to Europe, and really in comparison to a lot of the developed world. It's just, if you look back at American history, right, and how much we care about automobiles, we always prioritize automobiles versus foot traffic or versus bike traffic or versus anything else that's not on four wheels. We've always put vehicles on a pedestal historically. And so what does that mean now? So for example, in Houston, right? So Houston is a very interesting case study, right? Because fourth largest city, massive population, massive space, right? Sidewalks are virtually non-existent in that city. And so it's an unfortunate thing for the citizenry, because how do you get around? If you're not using public transit, you're just having to walk in the grass essentially, which presents so many issues for a lot of people. And so when you look at a lot of different American cities, Miami, for example, right? Miami is a city which is huge, largest metropolitan area in the state of Florida. The sidewalk system here is a complete disaster. We have tons of money coming in and out of Florida, but there's no prioritization to make pedestrianism a common occurrence, not only here in Florida, but throughout the United States. It's just something that has always gone on the back burner historically in this country. So quick story, I'm at this bar, I'm sitting literally at the bar, And the bartender, he's doing the whole small talk thing. And so I end up finding out that the guy's from Portland, Oregon, which, if you know anything about Portland, it is the most pedestrian-friendly city in the United States, and one of the more pedestrian-friendly cities actually in North America. And so this guy informed me that he doesn't even own a vehicle here in Florida. And I'm like, bro, how do you live without owning a vehicle here? Like, I need a vehicle here. And he was like, oh, I got my bike. And I'm like, well, how's the biking experience? Because, I come from Europe, everybody's got a bike. People bike to work, people bike to, pick up their kids from school. People bike everywhere, right? And there's some cities like Amsterdam where people only drive bikes. And so he was like, man, you know what? If I had to rank it on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm gonna give it a 1. He said it's horrible here in Florida. And so, it's really embarrassing when you think about it, because, we have the resources, we have the technological ability, and, I see so much construction happening around the area. It's like, why are we not prioritizing our people a little bit more? Why aren't we prioritizing our pedestrians and their safety and well-being a little bit more? We should be pushing people to walk more. We should be pushing people to utilize bikes more. The traffic where I live, horrendous. Some of the worst traffic in the United States. And so, there should be viable alternatives to the rat race. And sadly, especially where I am in the United States, the options are terrible. They're awful. No sidewalks, no bike lanes. And so, something's got to change. But, as I mentioned earlier, my time in Germany and my time in Europe, pedestrianism is like at the top when it comes to society and what the governments there care about, right? They value their people a little bit more. Here in the United States, they value the dollar a little bit more. And so if it's not making them more money, it doesn't matter at the end of the day here. It's a sad reality. I know that's gonna push a couple of buttons, but like I said, if you're one of those people that your head has been in the sand, for the last decade or so, I strongly urge you to dig it out, because this shit is pretty blatantly obvious. Now, the next point I want to talk about is actually kind of piggybacking off of pedestrianism. I want to talk about the driving experience in the United States. I want to tell you right here and now that drivers here in the United States of America universally suck. So if you're a person that is as unlucky as me to live in the state of Florida, you will know that the driving experience here is a complete nightmare. From the infrastructure to the amount of construction being done on the roadways, to people moving from all over the world to be here and not knowing, how a steering wheel is supposed to be used, or not knowing, the difference between gas and brake and, turn signals. It is awful, 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 awful here. And sadly, there's just a broad sense of ignorance here. People just don't know how to drive. People don't care to know how to drive. It's like signage and speed limits are suggestions here in Florida. Now look, I lived in Germany, right? And to go from a country and society that, where it takes a couple of years to get your driver's license, it's, sometimes in upwards of 4 years to get your driver's license, to then come to a place in the United States where, and in the state of Florida specifically, it could take you a few weeks to get your driver's license, sometimes even a couple of days to get your driver's license. It is blatantly obvious how much people just don't know how to drive here. And also there's an overwhelming sense of selfishness here. It's like, I have to get to my destination. I don't care about your destination. I only care about my destination. I don't care about your safety and well-being. I only care about my safety and well-being. And so living in a country like Germany, which is extremely collectivist, and living in a continent like Europe, which is extremely collectivist, the driving experience here in the United States is a huge downgrade. People just suck at driving here, and they don't care about even getting better at driving. They just don't care about driving. And so it's very difficult. It presents a lot of challenges. I just don't see it changing. I don't see that mindset changing or progressing anytime soon. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and I think a lot of people saw this one coming, but it's actually pretty different from what we've talked about for the most part. People here in the United States allow politics to consume them. People here in the United States just can't find it within themselves to not make their political affiliation their sole identity or their sole identifier. I, for the life of me, can't understand why, but people here just have so much pride when it comes to politics and political parties and, the economy, which I get, right, on the surface. But as we've seen over the years, there's become some real extremism that exists here in the United States and exists on a mainstream scale. Now, I will say I love that about the United States, right? The First Amendment, right? I love the US Constitution. You know, I love the freedoms that we have here in the United States. But people, man, they take it really far sometimes. You know, nobody should ever be assaulted. Nobody's life should be at risk, you know, based off of their political affiliations. Just let people feel how they want and do what they want. Now, if you're one of those individuals that is out there like preaching for certain people to get hurt, right? Or you don't like certain people because of the way they look, I don't agree with that. And those people, like, that type of shit needs to stop. But like, if you believe in a specific candidate or like you align yourself with a certain political party, do that. But just the fact that people here like cover their car in bumper stickers, or they put huge flags out in front of their house, like, and they, you know, they're out there sticking middle fingers at people as they drive by. I don't agree with that, man. And you know, people here, there's a huge sense of patriotism here in America, which tends to make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And I know there's this America First thing now, and it's like, we don't care about other people. I get it, man. This country has been through the ringer. I totally get it. But, you know, there's a real issue with extremism here in the United States on both sides. And it's very different to see that first person living here in the United States. We're seeing this stuff on the news, and I see it everywhere. Grocery stores, the post office, you know, just out walking around my neighborhood. You literally see it everywhere. It's hard to escape the insane amount of politics. So yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, I never once saw it in Europe at all. And you would see protests and stuff like that, right? But I never saw like MAGA hats, or, you know, I never saw Biden shirts. I never saw any of that type of thing in Germany at all with any political party, any political candidate. I never saw that in Europe, period, at all. And even when I would go to the UK, a country that's extremely political, I never saw any of that while I was there. And Spain, certainly not. Turkey, certainly not. I never saw it anywhere in Europe. And it was quite refreshing, honestly. Now, we've got two more points to make. I think you guys are really going to enjoy the last one. But the next thing I want to talk about is the rate of violence is much higher here in the United States than it is in Europe. Now, when I lived in Germany, I can't even recall an incident of violence that I personally witnessed. You know, there's a different, like I said, Germany's a very collectivist society. And so there's this sort of universal ideology of like, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of our city, taking care of our country, taking care of the children, taking care of each other. Sadly, that does not exist here in the United States. And there's a huge rift in our society right now, unfortunately. So you gotta remember, I live here in Florida, right? The place that is like the poster child of violence, jokes, headlines and stuff like that. You know, Florida Man is our big thing here. So Florida is a very violent place, like one of the most violent places in the country. And in fact, we have some of the higher crime rates in cities here in Florida. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, St. Pete. You know, we've got some big cities here that are just riddled with crime. And I see it first person because I live in this state. I drive around this state. I don't really watch the news that much, but when you're like watching a TV show and there's like breaking news, man stabs everybody in a, you know, gas station in Miami-Dade, it's like, dude, I never experienced this in Germany ever. I never experienced this in Europe ever. You know, there's a real sense of collectivism in Europe. And, you know, specifically me living in Germany, right? The worst crime that I would see in Stuttgart, because I saw no crime, but like the worst crime that you will see if you live in a city like that in Stuttgart is maybe some guy will like reach over somebody's fence, grab an apple down from the tree and eat it, right? And they will, you know, have the cops called on them, the Polizei called on them. That's like the worst crime that you would see there. That's it. And so, you know, it's interesting to get DMs from people, and I'm still getting DMs about Germany related stuff to this day. But a lot of people are like, hey Trey, you know, I want to talk about the safety. You know, I have kids, I have a wife, I have a husband, you know, and I want to make sure that my family is safe. How is crime in Germany? In my opinion, it's virtually non-existent. I know the statistics are going to say otherwise, right? Because you have cities like Berlin, which are massive. You have cities like Hamburg, which are massive. Frankfurt, Köln, larger cities that have massive populations of people, right? It's almost an impossibility to have no crime. There is still some petty theft and stuff like that that occurs, but you're not gonna really see like serial killers, mass shootings, mass stabbings. A lot of that stuff is pretty non-existent, not only in Germany, but really in Europe as a whole. And so, it's interesting to get DMs from people, and I'm still getting DMs about Germany related stuff to this day. But a lot of people are like, hey Trey, I want to talk about the safety. I have kids, I have a wife, I have a husband, and I want to make sure that my family is safe. How is crime in Germany? In my opinion, it's virtually non-existent. Now, I know the statistics are gonna say otherwise, right? Because you have cities like Berlin, which are massive. You have cities like Hamburg, which are massive. Frankfurt, Köln, larger cities that have massive populations of people, right? It's almost an impossibility to have no crime. There is still some petty theft and stuff like that that occurs, but you're not gonna really see like serial killers, mass shootings, mass stabbings. A lot of that stuff is pretty non-existent, not only in Germany, but really in Europe as a whole. So I actually met one of my subscribers when I was living back in Germany in person, and we had a discussion about like life in Germany and crime and stuff. And he was from Munich actually, and we just so happened to be talking about crime. He informed me that Munich is a city of about 2 to 3 million people. It's the third largest city in the country. With that amount of people, so one would think a city of that size is going to have a lot of crime, right? Or crime issues. But I was extremely impressed to learn that amongst cities in Europe that are around the size of Munich, Munich actually has one of the lowest crime rates in Europe in general. So not only in Germany, but in the entire continent, some of the lowest crime rates. The worst thing you'll see is like guy will drink a bunch of beers and like run into the street, right? That's like the worst thing you would see happen in Munich. Here in the United States, there's a massive amount of white collar crime, blue collar crime, crime within the systems, and it's just it's a pretty unsafe place. I just don't see that changing. Sadly, when we compare crime between Europe and the United States, most European countries in the United States is always gonna come out on top. And I know people are gonna be like, well, Trey, of course it's gonna come out on top. There's more people in the United States. Dude, look at per capita. We still have the higher rate of crime here in the United States. This isn't even debatable. You can try to debate me if you want in the comments section, but good luck, I'm gonna rip you to shreds. All right, and the final thing I wanna talk about, and I told you guys would get a good kick out of this one, but I wanna talk about the condiments here in the United States versus Europe. Now, I do want to make this statement, and I want this to be known. The condiments in Europe are much better than they are here in the United States. Now, my number one condiment of all time is Bavarian sweet mustard.
It just tastes so good. It honestly feels like love.
And I don't care what brand it is. Now, I do, because there's different types of people in Germany and different types of people in Europe. I love Handelmeier. Like that brand, it's the red label. You know what I'm talking about if you live in Germany or if you love German food. Handelmeier's Bavarian sweet mustard, the best. Not even close. But even looking at the basic condiments like ketchup, mustard, mayo, those are all so much better in Europe. And I was so spoiled. I miss it so much. I've even gotten on Amazon and like figured out ways to try to get the condiments that I am so used to over in Europe here to the United States, because the stuff here is just filled with additives and sugar and it's just a sugary mess. And yeah, I will say I miss the condiments in Europe so much. So I hope this video was a little bit more enjoyable than hearing about me getting my gallbladder removed or hearing about my wife cheating on me and getting me thrown out of Germany. But I had a really great time talking about this. I miss life in Europe so much. And so right now I'm putting myself in the position to be able to work remotely so I can travel back to Europe as many times as I want. I love it there. I miss the people, I miss the food, I miss the energy, the vibrance, the diversity and culture. I love it. I love the United States, don't get me wrong, but I grew up here, lived here for most of my life, and I got a taste of Europe, and man, the addiction is real. Like, I'm a real addict. I miss it so much. So if you guys did appreciate this video, I invite you to give it a big thumbs up, as it does help the channel in a number of ways. If you also enjoy this type of content and my energy, I do invite you to subscribe. We have a lot of fun here. If there's any subjects that you'd like me to address, leave them in the comment section below. And like I always do, I am gonna link my Instagram in the description. So if you have any direct questions for me, feel free to just hit me up. I have a great open door policy. If I don't get back to you immediately, it's probably because I'm out and about, but I will always get back to you in a timely manner. So thank you guys for the continued love and support. The Florida State Fair is coming up, which I have not been to in well over 20 years that I'm gonna get back to. That's probably gonna be the next video that I make. So look out for that one. You're gonna see lots of horrible food, lots of fun rides, lots of great energy, and you're gonna get a chance to see what a real fair experience looks like here in the United States. So I love you guys, I miss you guys, take care of yourselves, and as always, thank you. Mahalo for watching.